This next few, I don't have many slides because it's more of you speaking than my job is to provoke you to speak. If I am able to successfully do that, then that's my learning outcome. And I can map it for my POs and PSOs and COs for the today's discussion. So as we see how this whole implementation is happening with regard to the NEP, there are a lot of confusions. And in public policy language, that is the domain that now I have adopted over time from political science. I have divorced political science for some time and now moving to public policy. So in public policy, any such confusion is welcome. It means that there is something happening. Otherwise, no confusion means it's a concern that, okay, policy is there, no confusion means there is nothing happening. So in a way, it is welcome confusion, but let us unravel the confusion and see where are the issues in this context, specifically for governance and regulation. So my friend and colleague Dr. Manasa earlier has shared with you some of the specific aspects of interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity. Though I was not there, but I know very well because we have been working closely for many years. I know her mind, so I can imagine what she might have shared, especially from practice point of view, which is her strength, and she herself has practiced it over time, from management, commerce to applied areas, and including Indian knowledge system and so on and so forth. So I'm sure what she might have shared to some extent. So this confusion we need to unravel, and here I'll not be able to address all the confusions. I'm purposely calling it confusion, only specifically with governance, because for me that's the source of all confusion also. In a way, if you are able to at least today, in the next few minutes or so, arrive at identifying, as I say, a good doctor is the one who can diagnose the disease. Only then they are able to. But today we have outsourced that to diagnostic center also. So at least we should not do that. As teachers, we are the doctors of the problem. And I think let us diagnose the problem. Then you can write your prescription yourself and solve that, right? Whether you use Ayurveda or allopathic, I'll leave it to you. But we need to identify the problem. So that is the intention only in the next few minutes of discussion. So let's give you the cue. Okay. Your name?
Pranav.
Pranav. Okay. So thanks, Pranav. So this is the ecosystem that we are in today, and you are one among them. 1,050 universities and counting. While I'm talking, there's one more coming up maybe. That's the pace at which universities are coming, and close to 42,000 colleges, and you are one among them. So your problem is definitely unique to you, but sum total of your unique problems eventually adds up to the problems that many colleges tend to also face. And each college is supposed to come out with their own solution also to those problems, which are locally relevant. At the same time, which are some of them could be generalized also to the national and the state level. But there are certain unique which are to your college by virtue of location, by virtue of the combination of courses you have, by virtue of the faculty and the sort of leadership and all those things, you tend to have your own unique problems, some of them. But whereas there are certain generic problems also. So NEP will not address the unique problems. And you should not expect that also. Because NEP as a policy, national policy, cannot go to the unique problems. It can only give you a prescription at a broader level. And that is where I'll share some of the challenges which NEP has identified as a major challenges. Right? I'll come to that slide eventually. But why I wanted to show this slide, not to load you with facts, definitely after lunch, but definitely to kind of tell you that it is a very complex system we are talking about. Higher education is not a very simple system. And partly we are also responsible to make it more complex. Right? Already it is complex by structure, but we are making it complex by practice. I think we need to first untangle ourselves, our puzzles. But anyways, the structure, system-wise, it is already very complicated for two reasons. One is sheer number, which is unmanageable. Second is the diversity of institutions, right? And the diversity of regulatory bodies. I can go breathless like Shankar Mahadevan, who sings, what is that song, famous song? Shankar Mahadevan's Breathless song? Yeah. Yes, I'm sure. Post-lunch things are fine. So, see, I can go naming them, right? There is institution of national importance, public team, private public state, private state, blah, blah, blah. And then there is regulatory, IMC, BCI, NMC, and you can go on naming PCI and all those. Even sometimes we murmur them in the sleep because of our concerns, right? So there is complexity already. Regulatory system, every program, every course has a regulatory body. And I imagine myself in a multidisciplinary university where there are 18 regulatory bodies for 18 subjects and there are 12 months. Imagine at least we are expecting on an average 1 or 2 regulatory body to come each month. The entire year is about meeting their requirements and addressing the requirements. So NEP takes a bird's eye view, 35,000 feet when you fly in the aircraft. From there, what the higher education problems are. But with the condition and with a sort of expectation that each institution will also respond to it and localize their solutions. That is very important. That is the main point. Second point is complexity, and first point is the number. Third is the gross enrollment ratio. And that is why NEP recommends 50% of gross enrollment ratio. For those who don't know, just it's better to repeat. GER is basically what is the percentage of total eligible population who are currently pursuing higher education. So in other words, those who have completed their 12th standard, who are eligible to get into higher education. Forget the PUC for now. Of course, that is also counted, but still, for the sake of clarity, undergraduation, post-graduation and PhD. So those are eligible, they are not either enrolled or they are enrolled. But this is the, in other words, out of 100 eligible children, only 27 are in higher education. So whom you are teaching today are part of those 27% in the country. Compare that with South Korea, it is 89%. We are 27, South Korea is 89. And we can compare. But of course, we cannot compare apples and oranges. But still, there's a number to keep in mind. So NEP is making what you call practical suggestion that by 2030, can we increase it by 13%? At least. Forget about 89, 90, but can it be made, 23%, that is 50%. Can we make it as 50%? That is the, what you call, incremental recommendation. But it does not say that it has to be only through brick and mortar institutions. It can be also through open distance learning, which we have developed. We, meaning I say, you and me have dual roles, members of society and members of education institution. So we both believe there is a stigma to open distance learning. Those who are unable to pursue for various reasons, but also there is an intellectual issue involved in that those who are slow learners often go for open distance learning in addition to other reasons, economic reasons, accessibility reasons and so on and so forth. And unfortunately it is skewed toward women, saying that they cannot address and go to institutions for pursuing higher education, they opt for those things. So that stigma has to be addressed and improve the quality of open distance learning. And then the e-learning, online learning. Before the pandemic, NEP had recommended, it is not a matter of success or being proud that NEP was able to predict the pandemic. It's a negative thing, definitely. But at least the thought process, the National Educational Technology Forum, which NEP recommends, is something which has to now see how these two, in addition to brick and mortar, can reach, make us to reach 50% of GER. Now, if this happens, what is the first challenge that we're going to face? Are we ready? Is everybody going to ask this question? And that readiness is not about only classroom. That readiness is not only about teachers. That readiness is not about textbooks or reference books. That readiness is basically governance. Very important. First gatekeeper for the readiness is governance. Aligned with governance is also leadership, and not leadership just by saying management or principal. It's each teacher is a leader in their classroom, right? So that is also a level at which I'm talking about. So that is where we need to identify the problem and diagnose the problem. So I think this slide, I wanted to communicate 3 points. One, you are in an ecosystem which is very complex and very wide, which is basically you are located there. Second, when we talk about the numbers, we are talking about the different types of institutions and different type of regulatory bodies. And third, the idea of this GR going to create a situation for us to be ready, quote unquote, meaning first important point is, in addition to all other things, from this information and from nationwide consultation, I still remember it was 22nd or 23rd August 2017, the first meeting of the draft NEP headed by Dr. Kasturangan sir was at NAC office, and first thing was, what are the challenges which higher education is facing? So his space experience was so useful, because when they make a satellite, they work like a project, and everybody is important in that, like we also do in our own classrooms, because we are launching students, they are launching satellites. So it's a problem for all of us. So then he started thinking, let us identify some 20-30 challenges which higher education or education is facing. So NEP is for both, no? Education in general, but let's start with higher education, because most of us know that in that discussion. So, but then the point came, this will be called as expert-driven challenges or experiential-led challenges. But what is the evidence on the ground for these challenges? So we went for long consultations, sent out surveys, sent out this UGC and all other bodies to collect what are the challenges, and looked at all the data which is available. So from that came, Pranav left, okay, next slide please. From that point came, next slide, I'll come back to this, because, yeah, thank you. You have to press 8 times or 9 times. There were 10 challenges which were identified from that experience. From August last week, coinciding with maybe today's date, to December, there was a lot of efforts in collating what are those challenges that higher education, and similarly for school also it was identified. So now these 10 challenges which you see on the screen, if you can go on pressing them till the last point, you can go. Majority of these challenges face a problem of governance. Then comes attitude, then comes our curriculum, then comes many other things. I'll give only 2 examples which are in red font. Rigid separation of disciplines with early specialization and streaming of students into narrow areas of studies. First step is governance, that is the very fact that how you organize your academic programs, how you organize your timetable, how affiliating university is helping out you to have your own course structures, right? What is that? It's a governance issue. Only then the content issue comes. You must have the autonomy, you must have the intent to do that, leadership and governance for that. But sometimes leadership is very keen, but there is a lack of autonomy from the other side. So it's a governance issue at a micro level. Then if you say the limited teacher and institution autonomy, I'm sure every institution wants to do it, but there are a lot of barriers, regulatory barriers, affiliating university barriers, and many others. It is not that again affiliating university wants to do it. It is a system which we have inherited. It is difficult to lose the track very soon. That is why NEP makes certain recommendation. So in other words, what I am trying to inform you here is, one, governance is central to all the issues. Not that because I am speaking on the topic I am saying, but it's a fact. Second, when you read NEP document, one request to all of you, I have already shared the slides, but if you can use this slide as your index to read the recommendations of NEP, then you will see every challenge has been addressed with certain recommendations. Every challenge. In other words, that exercise of identifying challenge was not simply in the air, it was with a purpose. And hence what happens when you are reading it, there are 3 issues I have witnessed over time. Somebody reads from commerce mindset. What is there for commerce in this NEP? There are a few I have seen, I have also heard them saying. Somebody reads from affiliating college point of view. Somebody will read from university point of view. Somebody will see whether my job will be there or not in NEP, right? Or my salary will be increased or not. It's a common sense. No, it's also human tendency. It's not that they're doing wrong or bad, but that is the expectation. But I want you to flip it. Please read it from this angle. These are the challenges. If you agree these are also the challenges, then let us see what the policy recommends. Then start thinking of how to implement one by one. One solution I am telling is, at least those which are in red can be resolved through reforms in governance. For example, there are few which can be reformed without any much of governance and leadership, but only through your individual classroom experiences. Right? Making learning joyful and discovery based. Do we need a circular for it? From the VC of BCU or from your head of the institution? It is our passion, it's our obligation. That is what NEP recommends. making learning joyful, discovery based and creative. It is our obligation. We have decided that we will do it. So for example, so that is also those kind of things which are there in the recommendation of NEP. But from governance point of view, these are some things which you can look into. And in draft NEP, this last second point here. In the draft NEP, it was very interesting. To the revised NEP. And there is a tendency of ignoring the draft NEP because it looks bigger and thicker. But I can assure you that that's much more easier and interesting to read than the 60-page document, because 60-page document is a statement of policy recommendation. But there every policy recommendation has a rationale, half a page rationale. One example I'll give if it gets excited to you to go and read. That is, there is a quotation by Steve Jobs, the one who is the founding member of this Macintosh, Apple. So there is a statement for liberal arts section that majority of the engineers or employees of Macintosh are artisans, musicians and painters, and then they become engineers or whatever, that exact word I don't know, but the intent is that they don't hire as engineers, they are basically people from arts and drama and music and all, and then they bring in their creativity as engineers. So those are nice statements which are useful to you to understand why a recommendation of liberal arts education, multidisciplinarity is been brought in. Right? So please read. So the last second point, in the draft NEP, the ineffective regulatory system. I remember when we were writing that, at least Professor Ramachandran from NEPA, who was drafting that very close discussion, night 2:30 at ICTS in Hesarghatta, International Center for Theoretical Science. There was a word which was debated for almost half an hour. Should we use the word disempowering regulatory system or ineffective regulatory system? And we all had a consensus that we'll use disempowering only to communicate, because that's what you all feel, no? The regulatory system is so disempowering. But when the revised version came, it became ineffective because it has to be balanced. Because this is the how system works. But intent is, it is disempowering. It doesn't empower. Regulatory system doesn't empower us. So there's a reform there. Right? Can you go to previous slide, please? So for reforming the governance, I want to remind all of us here, purpose of higher education. What is the purpose of higher education? So if you see, there are 4 purposes. Don't stress too much on the text post lunch. Too much text is also a problem. I'll only tell the keywords. First purpose is to inspire and enable individuals to develop their capabilities to the highest potential. Every student comes with some potential. But do they go back after their degree with highest potential? We need to check that. Not that I'm asking you to check it for yourself, but I'm saying that is the purpose. But do we have an enabling governance system for that? Again, that is where we need to analyze and reflect. Second is to increase the knowledge, not to give knowledge, but increase, because they already come with some knowledge. Right? So we have to increase. So we have good governance mechanism for that. We have to reflect upon it. Third is for serving adaptable knowledge economy, that is application of knowledge for economy. At the same time, the fourth one, that is to have a knowledge society where individuals can contribute to society in terms of democratic values. For all these 4 we need. But now I want to ask you this question and then take a pause. You tell me, in your 3 core functions of your higher education institution, which are teaching, research and extension, which in West they call service. Do we imbibe all the 4 or any 1 or any 2? Purpose. I'll take a pause for some time. Do you think that you have imbibed? I'm not asking the leadership here. I want you in the respective classroom. Do we imbibe them? No, yes, no, yes. Yes, no, yes, no, no, yes. So please think about it. Let's not, again, there's no hard and fast rule that you have to agree or disagree only, or only agree and not disagree. But the point is, I want to know from you. Do you all agree this is the purpose of higher education? Yes. Inspire? Yes. Highest potential, very important word, highest. Increase is very important. Engage them in society and apply that for economy in larger sense, for innovation and change. But in our 3 core, anywhere in the world you go, these are the 3 functions if any higher education should do, right? What varies is the degree of priority. IISc will focus on research, followed by teaching and then some extension. And others, for example, will focus on teaching followed by research and extension. But unfortunately, extension is always third. In fact, it is called as a third mission. Unfortunately, there is very one or two exceptions maybe where there is a first mission of the university, because it doesn't add money, isn't it? So, and because it's not sustainable. But we don't have any government institution also focus on extension. It's unfortunate. But anyways, so in any of these three functions or all of these three functions, do we have this fourth purpose? I am sure you have it, right? But what happens is we wait for NAT to come and tell you, because 7 parameters are also measuring this, right? We wait for NAT to give you certificate, or NBA to give certificate, or any other rating body to give certificate, right? But then only we'll realize, yes, we are doing it. So that is one way. But already you are doing it. But only thing is, it is not getting embedded into the overall functions and practices, on a daily basis. Maybe it is. Oh, did I switch off some? So maybe it is getting imbibed into systemic practices. So that's one provocation. Yeah, can you go? Next slide, please. After this, slide 5. Some exercise for you. Yeah. So I wanted to suggest what you call the structural changes which are happening at a global level, national level, and institutional level, and state level. So there are many interesting literature. I purposely thought of having the literature so that you can go back if you like to read about it. So these are two scholars. I'll share the citation and the article. Chattopadhyay is from JNU, Soumen Chattopadhyay, and Michael Watt is from Institute of Education in London. So he has written about India, an Indian higher education governance system, where he talks about in future why we need to refer to governance and regulation reform is because these are the problems we are going to face. Rapid massification. Second is increasing diversity among HEIs. Third is stakeholders' approach towards education, where government is gradually withdrawing and private sector is coming in. And of course, increasing role of market. Because today most of our courses are determined by the labor market. So with all these four coming in, there has to be some reform. And to add to that, NEP also brings another reform. That is, going forward, we will have 3 types of institutions, which is under the heading called institutional restructuring and consolidation, where we will have research intensive university with, this is where the mistake happens. Most of us are reading it only this way. Please correct yourself if you have read it otherwise. It very clearly says research intensive university with significant teaching. Teaching intensive university with some research, and degree awarding autonomous college. Very often they say research university will not do any teaching. It is very clear in saying research intensive university with significant teaching, and IISc is already doing that by introducing a 4-year undergrad program. Teaching intensive university with some research, and degree awarding autonomous college. So that itself will demand a lot of reforms in governance. So better reactive to be proactive and start thinking how this will be evolving, right? Next slide, please. So at the 4 levels that we see, higher education governance or university governance is operated at 4 levels. One is the meta level, which is the international policies like the QS World Ranking, Times World Ranking determine what should be your governance mechanisms on the ground. So much so that depending on your ranking, you will be now given institutional eminence status. Depending on the ranking, you will be allowed to also offer online learning distance education program. So that becomes now a new metric by itself. So where you have to depend on collaboration, etc. Second is the macro, that is the national and regional level. Third is the meso, the state government of Karnataka level, and micro, which is the institutional level. All 4 levels are very critical. But very often what we see is the macro and the meso, right? We don't see there is a direct influence of the meta on the micro. That is, international changes are affecting us directly in a very indirect way. But we are not able to foresee that. So I want you to also be thoughtful. I'm not saying that is good or bad, but I was just reading a book by a chapter written by Professor Menon, who established the National Law School, on comparing models of Indian universities with others. So he there criticizes this ranking as the only metric. Fine, that's also acceptable. But do we have a choice to ignore them? Because today our policies are also not NEP per se, but NEP doesn't make any reference to world ranking, but other UGC policies are aligned to world ranking. So it is something that we need to reflect upon, but that is one thing. Second is the macro influencing the meso, like RUSA. RUSA is a good example of national government influencing the state government's institutions. How are they operating at that level? So that is another challenge. The concurrent list of the nature of the education, where it is a concurrent list, has also created a lot of challenges. In fact, Professor Menon in his chapter also writes that has caused issues with financial allocation, which has made university to depend on affiliating fees. It's a vicious cycle. Since the state is withdrawing in terms of financial allocation, then where will the state universities go? They'll go to the affiliation system. And that is a vicious cycle which they don't want to give up. Right? And how to convert this vicious cycle into virtuous cycle for a degree awarding autonomous college is going to be a big governance issue. And this was attempted in 2012-13 by Karnataka Knowledge Commission by introducing innovative university bill, where they wanted to use Mysore and KUD as the example, where they wanted to bring this no affiliation mechanism. It did not go through. So this is another governance challenge which we are going to face between the macro and the meso, and between the meso, that is meso meaning state government, and the micro, the institution. That's a big challenge. Fortunately, we have some support in terms of the State Higher Education Council, who plays a role between UGC and the higher education institution, and vice versa. But this is a mechanism. That is what the system of higher education is in its form. But if you go to the next slide, I want to explain. Next slide, please. This point, third point here. This one. Every university, large or small. So again, now onwards, I have used it purposely because for us to sink in, but I use this occasion to also tell you, going forward, we should avoid the word university as much as possible. We should use the word HEI, higher education institution. That is going to be the norm in the next few years and next few months maybe, because already the draft public higher education institution bill and the draft private higher education institution bill was in public domain. Now the feedback has come, and the government of Karnataka, the draft headed by Professor Atre and others who were there in the team, has also used the word HEI going forward. So much so that in the act, the university word has been taken out. Right? So because that is also one of the, because if you have a university, then degree awarding autonomous college will not have any meaning. Right? That is the logical thing. But anyway, so every university, large or small, should have the scope to rise up to the prestige achieved through its performance and recognition. There is no barrier. If you are able to have that as a higher education institution yourself, if you are able to rise up to BCU tomorrow, as whatever contributions you are making, your performance should be the metric, not any other reasons. And that is coming through. It is not going to happen today or by end of this year. But the plan is on the anvil. The NEP implementation task force of each university is constantly thinking about how much autonomy we should give to institution, rather than curtailing it. But it will take some time, because that is also sort of engulfed in this whole governance and leadership kind of issues in most cases. It will take some time, but at least the policy ecosystem is ready. Right? Can you do next slide? So here is where what I feel is very critical. Whatever happens at a meta level, whatever happens at the macro level, whatever happens at the meso level is one thing. But what happens at a micro level is very important, because that is the local context. That is your, what you call local experience. But that unfortunately doesn't get its due recognition because of, again, issues of lack of efficient and effective governance, and also in many cases the leadership also. I think that agency is missing. And how do we define it? Is nothing but university governance means division of resources. Very simple. Division of resources and its interaction between the overall governing bodies. Right? Which also includes you, because your representatives are there in governing bodies, in their capacities. Right? So that is where the interaction is very important. But often we assume things, that interaction is simple. I keep asking many places that you have a board of studies. They say yes. Who are there in the board of studies? They say X, Y, Z. I said, why not have somebody from IISc as part of your board of studies, if it is physics, chemistry or something. So it's very difficult to reach out to them. Have you written to them? No. So that's the agency. Let them say no. There's no harm in writing to them. Their no is an answer, which is also good. At least you have made an effort to reach out to them. But what happens? BOS members should be available on phone call. Tomorrow is BOS. Sir, madam, will you be able to attend tomorrow? Yes. Then I'll also be in your BOS. You also be in my BOS. Because BOS is a very critical entity now. At least it was supposed to be there since independence, but now at least with NEP it has become more critical. That whatever is approved in the BOS is now to be seen very seriously by universities. But what is that issue there is the interaction between overall governing bodies. So BOS is an important component of governance. Without that, it cannot go to academic council, and academic council will take it to the respective decision-making bodies to start a program and so on and so forth. But often we tend to assume things, and I think that is where I was saying micro becomes very, very important. And we always complain the macro. Oh, central government is like this, regulatory bodies are like this. But within that limitation, why is that there is no sort of similar performance across all affiliating system? Why is that some affiliating colleges are doing very well? Why is that some are not doing well? But both are affiliation system within the same university setup. Even within the PCU, we can always see where we stand as affiliating college, right? So there is something which is already there at a micro level which we need to harness to the maximum. But often we compromise on it. I think that is first thing I would like to say, because it's our hands, not on somebody else's hand. Can you go to next slide, please? So when we talk about university governance, these are the elements and dimensions becomes very important, right? One is who are the actors in the university, left side. Who are the actors? And please constantly tell yourself and ask yourself, who are you in this list when you are reading it individually? There's leadership, there's top management, university administrators who are at your other end of affiliation, faculty administrators. This is a new term that I have coined. The HODs are faculty administrators, because unfortunately, because of various other commitments, they spend much time on administration, right? But also they are faculty. Then faculty members who are teaching predominantly, students, alumni and community. The intent here is to communicate that governance doesn't mean only the top three. That is leadership, top management and university administrator, and to some extent faculty administrator. It also includes others in the down. But it doesn't mean that tomorrow overnight we are able to take decision onto our hand and say this is what you should do. It is supposed to be a sort of a gradual incremental approach where collectively, and I'll tell you an example which is going to be very critical in next 3 years. I don't prefer talking about past, but in next 3 years, institutional development plan will be the document which will become your reference point for accreditation, right? Not what you publish, not what you do. It is your IDP. Now IDP is supposed to have a short-term, mid-term, long-term plan. 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, however you define. Now that IDP is almost like your promissory note between you and the accreditation body. It's a contract. You have assured to do, if you don't do, hence accreditation will be binary, yes or no. No gradation, no solace, oh it is 3.25, 3.26, last time we got 3.21, no, that's solace. It is either yes, black and white, because you have given a promissory note to them, right? To whom? Accrediting body. How will you do that IDP? You cannot, 6-7 people cannot sit and do it, because it's a contract. Every faculty member is a party to contract. Student is a party to contract. Alumni is a party to contract. So everybody is subject to legal action, quote unquote. So hence it has to be collective. So if you start now, this whole consultative approach, collective approach, I'm sure you're already doing it, but I'm talking about in general, higher education. Governance is missing this, most cases, in most institutions. It's the biggest challenge. And IDP was not just to check on you. Again, don't please read me wrong. It is not like a monitoring tool. It is of the institution, by the institution, for the institution. Nothing to get for government, right? You do it, only accreditation body is coming and even these 7 criteria. Government doesn't say you to do these things. As an institution, if I have to have quality and survive and extend, I have to do these 7 criteria. It's all simple like that. But when you talk about university actors, or I am already, as I said, 3-4 years, I foresee yourself as a university by yourself. Because that is the norm. Degree awarding autonomous college means you are a university. Because that is the only difference between you and the university. You do all the activity, only thing you don't award the degree. Right? The very act of degree awarding means you become a university. So I am talking from aspirational point of view. So these actors are very, very important, all of them, individually. Then comes management and resources, which I said division of resources. So we talk about organizational aspects, coordination, accountability, autonomy, etc. Academic culture is very important. You should not leave out academic culture from governance. It is not only about budget, it is not only about policies, it is not just only about decision making and increment. It's very much there. But academic culture becomes very critical. So one example of academic culture, as I said, getting the best minds onto BOS is the first initiative of academic culture on campus. Multidisciplinarity, allocation of resources across campus is a mindset of an academic culture. But it is, as I said, no one size fits all sort of practice. It is your local context which you have to decide. Right? Then resources, there is funding, personnel, etc. Location and space is very critical. Last point on the third column from your left. Last point, time, location and space. Very often what happens is we don't make the best use of our location. Right? We are in the city center. First location means how close are we from railway station, metro or bus stand, which is from the student's point of view. But from research point of view, where you are, how can you make the best use of the location? So within, what is the radius at which you have IISc, right? How much time a person from JP Nagar will spend to come to IISc? Of course with metro lesser time, but still it is distance. And how much time you will spend to go and interact with them? Can you make the best use of this location as part of your governance mechanism, right? As part of your initiatives. So that is also very critical. And IDP will ask all these things going forward, right? And not, again, please don't do it as a compliance to IDP. It should be very sort of practice coming from our passion. Of course, there will be a set of parameters. And NAC intent was also that it should create that culture of quality. But over time, what has happened is because of pressure, it has become more of a compliance. And that will not solve the problem. We will achieve quality but not excellence. That's the difference. So the last two is the objective. For what are you going to reform your governance? To expand, or to create equity, or to create excellence, or all the three. That is also something nobody can, should or can tell you, but it is you as an institution should adopt it. And NEP is focusing on that. That is why it is saying, with another misread conception, is research intensive is higher than teaching intensive. Teaching intensive is higher than degree awarding. NEP doesn't say it at all. It says today you can be research intensive, and tomorrow if IASC feels that I am not ready to be research intensive, I want to be teaching intensive, they can always become one. It is not like deemed and private state university. It's just the matter of their culture and approach, right? And tomorrow if IASC says I want to simply become degree awarding autonomous, it's their choice. Their IDP will tell us. So it is not hierarchy. It is not ranking. Right? It is basically saying these are the three types that you want to look forward for. And it should be institutions to decide whether they are ready for being research intensive with significant teaching, teaching intensive with some research, or simply a degree awarding, which is also a big task and most responsible task, degree awarding. I will challenge IISc to become degree awarding college. It will be very difficult for them because the faculty are more research oriented. Teaching 16 hours is not in their hands. And I was spoiled in National Law School where I should teach 6 hours a week and 10 hours of research. Right? So when I came to affiliating college, I realized how difficult it is. 2 sections, same class. How do I make myself not to sleep? Because same content I have to teach in both sections. I have also gone through that. I understand your concerns. So it is difficult because the nature of faculty being recruited, the nature of vision mission of the institution, and the kind of work they do is very much aligned to research. So let them do best in that instead of forcing them to do teaching. There are some institutions which are very much passionate about teaching, so let them pursue teaching with some research. And there are some institutions who are very good at degree awarding mechanism, so they can also pursue that and make the best out of it. But where are you is you have to identify. Nobody else will come and tell you. No NAC will come and tell you, you become this, you become that. It has to come from you. And that is where that empowerment has to come within you. And regulatory system is disempowering. So that is why NEP is recommending Higher Education Commission of India, where the National Higher Education Regulatory Authority will subsume these 18, 17, except DCI and NMC for now. Others will be subsumed under National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. It will be a single window system where you will resolve all these challenges to some extent. From disempowering, it will be partially empowering, but not completely empowering. But are you ready to accept that? Is a question. Your governance is ready to accept it. That is something that you might want to think into. Can go next slide. Okay, so let me raise this 4 verticals which I just preempted. It is the Higher Education Commission of India, which has been now making a lot of news in the past, which was also reflected in the NEP, not in the same words of HECI. It was supposed to be National Education Commission as per NEP, draft NEP. Then in the 66-page document, it came as HECI. Under that, there are 4 verticals. Again, I am using this occasion to tell you, please don't misread and get mistaught also by various modes of communication. It's very important that we understand the principles behind this reforms in regulation and governance. One of the major principles is on transparency and public disclosure. So if institutions are doing excellent work, why should not they disclose in the public and fully be transparent? Why you need once in 5 years somebody to come and check you? Every day you should be exposed to public and expose yourself, what you are doing, that's fine, right? It should be public disclosure. So full public disclosure, full financial transparency is a founding principle. That is why it is called as light but tight. Have you heard this? Light but tight. So light but tight meaning the system would be light on you if you follow the principles of public disclosure, transparency, etc. Moment you default on it, the system is going to be tight on you. That's a difference. That's a simple concept. Regulatory system will not be generic. Today, every regulatory body sees every institution with the same eyes, right? Suspicion. But what NEP is recommending is, please make it differential. There are institutions who are doing a lot of hard work, honesty, integrity being implied, and things are happening in the way it should happen. Please don't see them from the same lens. Be light on them, because they are very honest. Integrity is very much embedded, and they will be exposing themselves in public by putting out things in public domain. But every institution to be seen in the same hands means it becomes disempowering. So that systemic change is happening. But again, the question is, you might be doing all that work, but your internal governance, how is that ready to respond to these changes? So this is an occasion, if we have not done in the past, to start reflecting upon it. And that's why I said all actors play a role. Please don't leave out parents. They are a very important entity as part of community of parents of your students, are very important as part of your governance mechanism. Alumni are very important, right? It is not merely for the purpose of quality assurance that alumni should be remembered. They should be very much integral part. Today, JNU websites, JNU hostels are built by alumni, right? In my alma mater, we have contributed, not only me, I'm not that rich to contribute to hostel, some contribution, because most of my friends are in civil service. So they all came together, and some who are working in World Bank and all. That's an interesting story, but I'll talk about later. So they have pooled funds, and 3 hostels have been built, named after rivers, Lohit and other 2, I think I just forgot. But yeah, so that is a commitment of alumni towards the institution. So they have become very important entity of governance, right? And we do have, in BOS also we have alumni representation. In other governance body we have alumni representation, but are they actually able to contribute full-fledged is a good example to think through. So hence these 4 verticals have been envisaged under the principle of light but tight. So there are 4. One is National Higher Education Regulatory Authority. Second is the National Accreditation Council, which I just said. Going forward, accreditation will be binary. Higher Education Grants Council and General Education Council. All your multiple entry exit, academic bank of credit, all that comes in the fourth one, General Education Council. So they are supposed to work around that. So these 18 regulatory bodies which I just mentioned will be subsumed under some of these roles, right? So now this will happen parallelly at a macro level and maybe at a meso level. But what has got the micro to do with that? Right? That is where we need to now start thinking on how we'll be ready to adopt it. And that is where I kept telling again and again, please identify all the actors who are central to governance mechanism and see how we can evolve. So next slide please. So way forward I feel that, as I mentioned, please envisage the spirit of NEP as of and by and for the institution. Okay, we have to now move from that earlier system of state-driven policies, university-driven policies, to now ourselves driving to the making certain policies. You can make those changes, and it is, as I said, it's not going to happen today on August 17th or by December 2022, but the process has to start now. At least that readiness has to be initiated. Otherwise, we'll again become reactive than proactive. It will be too late. So that is the reason why I wanted to flag that. As multidisciplinarity, holistic, how much you do it is a good example of your efficiency of governance. How in depth, how wide you are able to do it is a good example or a metric or parameter to measure your efficiency of governance at an institutional level. And I am sure, as I said, not all affiliating colleges have challenge with multidisciplinarity. There are many who are welcoming it. There are many I can say in full confidence because I have worked closely with them. I was just talking to Vittal Podarji of one example in Belgavi. Very closely I am working with them. So they are very much doing it with a lot of ease because their system is in place. Simple. System is in place and they are not driven by only one or two actors but the entire system. It is like, best analogy is earlier days and now today it's different. Earlier days when I used to watch cricket match, when Tendulkar used to get out, I used to turn off the TV and wait for some miracle where Srinath and Kumble used to win matches for us. Remember that. So it should not be like that. It should be all 11 players should play a role. Only then you can have that governance system in place. So that we still have a hope that even if that key person is out, others are able to perform. Right? The systems approach. I think this is one good example. Then appreciating the local context. I think governance, often we look for best practices. I think that is also a challenge because best practices are many, but they are not fit for you. You have to find your own best practice in local context where you are located. Right? The location that you are in and the type of faculty members you have and the leadership that you have a very unique set of experiences. But what is your best practice for yourself rather than looking at somewhere else and borrowing it? And that's one challenge, right? And vision mission is a good example. When I did a study for Karnataka Jnana Yoga, we studied the vision mission of all institutions in Karnataka and we run plagiarism test and it was, rest is a story. Right? And from where not it was coming from, Stanford, that, this and all, wonderful. I said, excellent, they have a vision. But the local context is not able to meet Stanford, right? I would say a good vision statement is, of course, something which you are not able to achieve easily. Professor Kincha used to always say, vision statement should be some, this is when PCU's vision was happening, when the Japet was there. I was in NLS, so he put me on deputation that time to look at the BCU's vision mission statement. Agu ni anuchetana, anuketana, yes. So, be bondless. So, the vision should be such that you should not achieve it easily. True, but it should not be such that you will never achieve it also. Such a high vision, my God, I was there. Yeah. So, that report is available on website, on Knowledge Commission. If it is still there, I don't know. But we did that. It was called Mapping the Karnataka's Knowledge Ecosystem. Very interesting findings we got there. Yeah, so that is one. And the last point is, we should not talk about world-class higher education institution only. We should be talking about world-class higher education ecosystem. And Karnataka is well placed there. So you have the best of science institution, you have the best of engineering institution, you have the best of social science institutions, but only thing is they are all in silos. So at a macro and the meso level, micro is looking at your vision in the local context. At the macro and the meso, that is the government of India and the government of Karnataka level, how can we think of world-class higher education system, not institution. When we talk about institution, then we are siloing ourselves. So system. And most of the institutions, South Korea and China have already moved towards this direction. They are not now talking about institution as world-class, and now UAE is going towards that direction. They are looking at world-class higher education system. And Ethiopia is another country which is very closely, the director of Higher Education Commission is my Erasmus Mundus classmate, so he is also constantly talking about system in many occasions. So in a way we are seeing we are actually going against the tide. So IDP for institution and systemic changes at the macro and the meso level are already happening. I feel if we are ready for it, we are able to come. But now I want to ask you, if this is the aspiration, if this is the way forward, are you seeing certain barriers and certain drivers in your day-to-day life? What are the barriers and drivers? I would like to hear more drivers, but of course I know I've been in the system in, as I said, various roles, from affiliating college to very unusual university to another system of university. So I know there are challenges, and that's why barriers meaning challenges and opportunities if this is the aspiration. Can you please think of some? What are those barriers that you feel in terms of reforming your governance system, in terms of allocation and division of manpower, resources, etc., which we just discussed, in order to achieve a goal that NEP is envisaging? Take multidisciplinarity, because previous session you had that. What are the challenges to become a truly multidisciplinary institution? From your point of view, don't blame government of Karnataka or government of India. That is always we are doing, and that is also I know. But from your point of view, what are the challenges? It could be as simple as students are not motivated. As simple as that. Okay? Which can be solved. It's an easy problem. Because that is one way of it. But any other such issues that you feel? I'm done with my slides, by the way, in case if that is an announcement to be made. Yes. Yeah. Human capital. Yeah, Podar sir wants to. Sir, please sit and.
When you talk about academics, we talk about participative learning. But when it comes to academic governance,
yeah. You can go back to first slide if you want. The challenges slide. Second slide, third slide. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead, go ahead.
so when it comes to academics, we talk about participative learning.
Yeah.
We expect participative learning. But when it comes to academic governance, we forget about a concept called as participative management.
Yes.
And what I feel is without participative management, we cannot think of bringing in a paradigm shift as far as
Yes.
academic governance.
Now, I blame we faculty members for that. We are unable to create that trust in the leadership that we are capable of participative management. I think we all are equally responsible for it, because when it comes to decision making, we don't take the responsibility. Stakeholders. I think we have to create the trust in the highest decision making body.
How we should have
So IDP is a good example. So we should start with the IDP and identify those 10 or 15 parameters on which we are ready to work on. Like, for example, you are maybe as an institution which I little know is, let's say, commerce and management is your strength. So you can start with that. What are your goals, objectives, and plan of action for research, teaching, and extension for, let's say, discipline of commerce? And where do you see yourself in 2025, 30, and 35? That is what IDP wants: short term, mid term, long term. And then you analyze. And for that, you need to strategize. Faculty recruitment, how many and who? That's very important. what should be the nature of faculty recruitment, so that your call for positions are also aligned to that. Infrastructure, what you need in order to organize that. And other thing would be in terms of collaborations. You don't have to look for, if your vision or aspiration is more regional, you don't have to have collaboration international. Focus on regional maybe. So like that we need to have those strategies. And once you have those parameters, you can have that collective decision. So as a pilot, before doing that, one good thing is to take the 7 criteria of NAC. Why should it only be the IQC coordinator headache? It should be headache of everybody. Headache I am using purposely, for all my friends know why, but it should be responsible to everybody. Because when it comes to success of NAC accreditation, we all take the benefit. When it comes to the failure, then the IQC coordinator, in a very lighter sense, right? But I think it is everybody's responsibility, because each of you are the beneficiary and the victim of accreditation, isn't it? So that is why I am saying NAC 7 criteria could be good pilot. Maybe in small groups you can start. And again, let us not say, oh, here is a person who has written a lot of papers, so he or she could be good in that criteria on research and publication. Maybe they are good at governance. Maybe they are good at teaching learning resources. But we have made our, so that identification itself is the first step as a governance reform. Then what comes out of the consultation is another step. And then we can move to IDP. So we have a NAC criteria 7, so we can start with that. That creates participative management and governance.
Who should create those parameters?
Institution.
Whether it should be created by NAC or...
No, that's what. We should not give the baton to somebody else. This is an internal matter and it should be done by institution first, then the remaining. Because till 2030, maybe this will be the norm which is evolving. But after that, you have to be ready in next 5-6 years that where you see yourself to develop the IDP, where it will be yours. And NEP very clearly says it is of the institution, by the institution and for the institution. Nowhere, right now SSR, no, what is the AQR? I am trying to forget it, that's why I don't want to remember that also. That is by the institution, of the institution, for NAC. So that should not happen. So it should be, all 3 should be for the institution. But that takes at least good 1 year time if you start now. And it's not that, as I said, sir, that there are challenges. It is possible. Only thing is, we should not, all faculty members who are the actors there should not wait for that to come. We should just initiate. There is no harm.
Who we should take as a role model? Should we take Western University?
I am, as I said, little critical about this best practice approach. But right now, as I said, fortunately or not, we have those 7 criteria. Look at your previous accreditation as a role model for that one and see where we stand. I think it should be again internal. So I am looking from that point of view. Of course, there are Nalanda Takshashila as a role model for all of us, but it has been there. Now we have to reach there. But right now we cannot work through them, but we have to use them as a vision. This is the ideal that we want to reach. But I think, right, sir, participative management is very, very critical, and that can happen. So internally at institutional level. Thank you, sir. Yes. I can hear you if you can speak. Mic is somewhere else. Yeah. That's one of the strengths of teachers. They can be heard everywhere. Yes.
I have a direct question for you, sir.
Yeah, please.
How women workers contribute in the governance part, especially in the education institutions?
No, why do you want to differentiate between men and women? No, I understand maybe there are certain, that is the concern, because in the STEM discipline, this was one point which came, that majority of the scientific think tanks, CSIR, INSA and all, they didn't have many occasions women as their director, leader and all those things. Are you coming from that point of view that we have certain limitations and challenges for women to become leaders, or in general?
In general.
Yeah, so there I would go with my first point. So there is no scope to differentiate. I think it is all about calling oneself as actor, whether it is male or female. It's an actor. We are an actor into this system of university system, so or higher education institution system. But I think what we need to envisage is that at our institutional level or individual level, let us identify what are those challenges that you are facing on the ground. Is it because of your you being part of a particular gender you have a challenge, or is it because of you being with a certain role in an institution? What do you see? So that is something that you need to assess at your institution level, because it is not the same in many institution level. Right? There are few institutions who tend to have this biasness, but many are not in that system. And policy will not be policy is not clearly differentiating that. In fact, it is very important that we need to refer to ourselves as with our roles rather than who we are. But many a time I have seen that in the accreditation process, for example, and so on and so forth, most of them don't come forward also. I think that is where the distinction has to be dissolved over time. But as I have told to others are also, I think it is all about how we take the initiative. So I don't have a ready-made answer for it. It is very subjective, it is very individual sort of experiential sort of issue. But if it is participative governance, it itself dissolves those differences. So if you have those systems in place, it will dissolve those issues. But please don't wait for somebody to come and say and ask you to do. I think that is where you have to evolve individually, right? So that is what I say. But yes, there is a challenge at a systemic level. We don't see many women taking up or being appointed or nominated, mostly, not in many cases. But recently we had a DST secretary or very senior scientific advisor who appointed. There are incidents, but numbers are less compared to the numbers that we see. Yes, but that's another issue currently. But at institutional level, systems are important. Yeah. Yes, sir.
People don't come up forward irrespective of genders.
That is a attitudinal problem.
Yeah.
There is no solution for that, sir. Because that is inside us. We can't tell. Yes, sir.
Sir, even at just a cursory look at policy.
Yes, sir.
Document.
You are talking which one, sir? The draft one or?
I have the last one. It's 16 page one.
Okay. 66 page document.
So what it is, even a cursory look at it,
Yeah.
you find the figures like 2030, this is 2040, this is.
Yes.
So it will have 20 end of the century. I mean, do we take into account the aspirational changes, societal changes, which will be revolutionary and very overall?
Yes.
I mean, where is that
Yes, sir.
space
So,
for thinking?
no, in the policy language, they are called as temporality. So, unlike the previous policies where there was no temporal component, here it was brought in with purpose for two reasons. One, that there is an incremental change, because, for example, this whole research intensive, teaching intensive degree awarding, for example, cannot happen overnight. It has to be incremental, so that we need to resolve our past baggage of the colonial system of affiliation system, and it will take time. It cannot happen overnight. As I just said, that financially universities are dependent on affiliation system, so it doesn't happen. So that is the reason why they have given, by that we should achieve it, not merely on that date or year, but that is a larger end time. But there are many things which Niti Aayog in its report has said 70% of NEP does not need any government order or circular, which can start happen yesterday, in the sense that making learning discovery based, joyful, creative, innovative is not something which we have to wait for a circular, which has to be done. We are signed up for this position of teaching because of that purpose. So I think these are only structural changes which are regulatory in order, where it takes time for them to evolve. Like regulatory bodies, they have also become part of a system which will not change overnight. That's why NMC and BCI are not yet brought under NHERA, but the remaining INC, PCI, Pharmacy Council of India, they are proposed under NHERA, but gradually. So now they are becoming commissions with the new revised bills and all, but gradually they will be brought in. So that is the timeline, sir. Nothing specific about ignoring the aspiration. nothing specific to undermine the aspiration, but to ensure that there is a target. Because 6% share of GDP was set in 1986. By when, we don't know. Even now we are not able to reach that. But the point is here, at least there is a direction for any policy making body to say that let us achieve this. Those who are serious to achieve that. But that is only the timeline, sir, not to postpone the aspiration. Definitely not. It is only that they want to ensure that it is happening. Only structural changes. Curricular changes and all can happen as and when institutions are ready. And if they are autonomous to do that.
So, one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So before I start off, I would like to congratulate you for your excellent presentation on governance and leadership.
Thank you.
So I have a question for you, sir. So how can a faculty be equipped to speak about the challenges and the drawbacks of the governance? So being a faculty, how can a faculty be equipped to face those challenges and the drawbacks in the governance?
So that depends. The challenges you're talking about, one I listed, or challenges which are...
One which you listed.
So those are the 10 challenges which were identified by NEP before the drafting stage, on which each recommendation. So the solution to your question is in the 484-page document, right? It looks thick, but it's half of Harry Potter. So you can read it in some time, no? At least as an analogy. So there, each recommendation provides a solution. See, multi and interdisciplinarity, for example. So it is creating a second challenge which I shared was there are rigid separation of disciplines, for example. So which is also happening here. I'm sure if we ask randomly, one department people are sitting together, another department, sometime it happens, right? Disciplinary, different, multidisciplinary. So Manasa had an impact on you. Good. So that's changed. So what happens is that is something which is our day-to-day practices. Because many a time it happens that we have a problem. In fact, if you heard Karl Popper, one of the famous philosophers, who says we should not be students of discipline but students of problems. So when you talk about a problem, it needs multidisciplinary perspective. Again, what happens is as a faculty, whichever department you are in, if you have that problem in front of you, which will demand multidisciplinary outlook, nothing stops you from taking input from others, right? What stops maybe is our time limitation because of teaching overload, or maybe that we are unable to use the effective communication, technology and other modes in terms of our capacities to make use of it. So there are those challenges. But here, as I said, macro, meso and micro. If you talk about addressing those challenges, yes, the national government has to provide us some policy implementation direction which will come, which is empowering regulatory mechanisms. State government has to give us some direction, that is through university, which will come. But what can you do as an individual faculty to overcome that challenge? This is what is one way of looking at it. Here is a problem. How will I solve it from multidisciplinary perspective? Here is a situation where it demands me to change my pedagogy style. How will I change it? I'm sure I always, Dr. Lingaraj Gandhi sir, I always keep asking him, how many times you visit a classroom in affiliating college? He said, I don't have time. That is fact also. But you have that classroom practice. That 15 minutes or 1 hour is your space. It is your kingdom. So how do you innovate pedagogy? Is your individual micro level respond to those problems. Can you make that multidisciplinary, the way you teach? I in fact asked many times to myself, when I was in National Law School and went to the affiliating college, to KSLU, Karnataka State Law University, I didn't see the difference. Only except that I have to teach more hours. But still the classroom was the same. Nothing different. In NLS, okay, they come with the CLAT exam marks, okay fine, they might be good in English. But here, affiliating college also, they were good students. Very creative, much creative than the NLS students actually. So, but the teaching method remained the same, only content changed. So that is my micro level response to that challenge. How much I can do. And nobody, and I, again, Dr. What is his name? Ishwar Bhatt sir, who was VC of KSL, I used to also, he wrote forward to my book on state and political obligation. So I used to again ask him also that 600 plus colleges, how much time you got to go to each college, so that people say, I don't have autonomy. What do they mean by I don't have autonomy in affiliating system? They have autonomy in classroom. Content might be there where you don't have autonomy, but delivery is your autonomy. No? How you that is my micro level change and shift to that issue of siloing disciplines. That is how I would reconcile, and it changes from person to person. There is no one size fits all approach. You might do it that way. You might have an innovative exam. You might have a different internal examination process. So within the system, you can navigate for next few years. But please think of system where you will be given full autonomy. What will you do with that? Are we ready to respond to that? Sir, my new friend.
You describe challenges very well.
Sir.
I have one challenge in my mind for the last 10 years.
10 years, okay sir.
Disturbing me.
Decadal challenge. Yes sir.
In the end of the seminar, presenter said, broken.
Yes. That is looking forward. The disturbance in my mind, a 14-year-old girl in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is very much in news nowadays. Yes, very much. The crisis.
In a small village in Sri Lanka, the village name is called Ravanaguda. I was curious, why this name? So I went all the way. The director of the museum helped me to go there.
Okay.
We had a big seminar in the village.
Mike, for him. So you want to come here? Because it's not be audible in the back.
Yes. Sir, you can use
Oh,
this mic.
microphone. In
Yeah.
a small village, we had a big seminar. Most of the people in the village. At the end, a 14-year-old came up and asked me, that disturbed me. Now, I want to relate it to our future. She asked me, Mr. Nena, you came all the way from India to see the village Ravanaguda. That was my curiosity. And they explained to me why that name came. Ravana brought Sita from India, his Pushpaka Yudmana brought her to this village first. Therefore, we gave the name Ravanaguda. Now, she asked me, why are you people, teachers, professors in India, taking life to your own children? I said, I don't tell any life to anybody. Tell me what? Why are you telling your children that there was a man called Ravana with 10 heads? Any child in the world will believe that.
That's
The child will believe it. That when you say Sita was brought in a Pushpaka Vimana, does any child in the world believe that? This girl asked me this question. I said to her, I'm very happy you are my guru. I will go back to India and tell the people in India this talent. I am reminded of that now. When we need structural change, ideological change, cultural revolution, all that we need in our country. But how do we do it? It's a big challenge.
Yes.
You have done it very well. But the national challenge for me, in my mind, is we in India, we need a thorough cultural revolution at many levels, all levels. Morning seminar, we had discipline. The one single word in India today lacking everywhere is discipline. What is our Bible doing in India today for us?
Yeah, I can give that. Thank you, sir, for those information for us to ponder upon. And discipline is very much central to our reforms. And I don't think that I'm supposed to respond to your statement, but I'm intrigued because you are sharing a fact. And but these are all linked to the new task of the national curriculum framework. So partly I take a cue from that, right? That is the very fact that you said, you know, how a student is being taught, how a child is being taught also makes a difference. And those those students or children or learner will eventually become part of our higher education system. So in a way, it is a great thought that the current system of the government thought to have Dr. Kasturirangan to continue to chair the national curriculum framework. So there is a continuity of NEP and the NCF and the spirit of what the NEP recommends in terms of making, as I said, I kept repeating it, and with purpose, making learning discovery based, joyful, creative, innovative, etc. for a child. is very, very critical. And how will you do that now? Not just by talking about it, but by revising the curriculum in such a way that it becomes very much locally situated with an aspiration to look towards a global outlook, which is what I use the word local. So I think that needs another few years to start coming in. But I can say definitely with my little experience from March on this NCF, the way, and the mandate document is in public domain, which is another document which you should all read. Mandate document is about how the NCF is going to come, and it is written by Dr. Manjul Bhargava and the team associated with him, who was also part of NEP. So in fact, the minister announced it on April 29th, that is the constitution on which NCF will be built. So it's on public domain. Again, I'll share the link. But one problem, always taking a step beyond yours, is like it has been bothering you for 10 years. It has been bothering you for first standard. That why we don't tend to read and write. Right? We are very good in terms of communication. See, for example, if you ask me to write what I've said, I will start avoiding Bhargavi madam. Right? Madam this, madam that, and all, I'll never be able to write what I said. So there is a disconnect. Because we assume that without reading we can write. Right? So I feel each classroom is an empirical data. Because in my little research, and I'm sure sir from Ethics Society will be interested to know, in NEP time we were trying to find out what is the literature, evidence, empirical literature on higher education, and we came out with a statement. There is no / or limited research on Indian issues by Indians on higher education. Right? So it is all outside. You name Philip Altbach is one person writer Indian higher education. Simon Marginson, Michael Watt, and you can name few, all are from outside. And same Indians when they go abroad. Suma Chitnis, who was here, then went there, she wrote. Amartya Sen also, when he was here, he wrote few, then he went there and wrote. So what is stopping us to convert our day-to-day observations into an empirical data to write some papers on that, so that we are able to communicate to the world? These are the challenges on the ground. And during NEP time, we were doing massive literature review to find. Of course, we have biographical sketch of great leaders like Professor Paute and many others who have done excellent work in leadership. And if you go to Rudolph and Rudolph, another two University of Illinois scholars who have written on education sociology in India, MS Baroda University, when they were visiting faculty there. So what is stopping us to convert what we are experiencing into writing? Because when in moment we say we have to write, we tend to have a limitation. And these days, one other issue, we can now have voice message on WhatsApp. So no writing required also, right? So I think that is where I would say some of these experiential insights plus some of these narratives are supposed to be coming out from us, which is where Indian knowledge system and multidisciplinarity is, I think, a solution to most of this with an appropriate governance support. These two have to come together. So in other words, curricular reforms are good, but they have to be equally backed with meso, macro and micro governance reforms. Otherwise, they do not go well. So that is why your participation becomes important. But that information is very useful for us to think that how do we portray ourselves, our history to our children is very, very important. And at the same time, how do you make it evidence-based is also critical with all the appropriate facts. And a lot of work has been done in terms of looking into the past from Ethics Society also. I think we have to learn a lot from them and see how to incorporate. So yes, thank you for that information. That really helped me to start thinking on the other tasks that I have. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts? No, as I said, this is all institutional centric and individual centric. Please don't wait for coming from top. Let's see how we can, sort of engage from our own individual space, right? And yeah, sir.
One of the problem with the teachers is that different further was feeling Adhyayana, Yajana, Jajana, Adhyapana. But we do the fourth one first and then come for the first.
Yes, yes.
Probably that is the main problem
Yes.
what we are facing.
But what was the cause for that, sir? And that is also something which we need to analyze.
It is.
Yeah. So where do you have to do the course correction? Is it the individual or is it the system? But both are equally important. Because I see that we have done that. But what again intrigues me is that why, I always ask this question as a researcher, why is that not all affiliated colleges are same? Why there is a variation? Good, bad and ugly. Why is there a variation? System is same human beings, but what is the change? I don't want to tell you the answer. We all know and you are thinking about it. But I just want to say that this is my concern only, alright? So there is something which is there, right? What you call, the devil is in the detail. To make it softer, the angel is in the detail, right? So yeah, so I'll stop here, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take. Thank you.